Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of Stop, Who Does That? I'm Jenna.
And I'm Jackie, and we hope you had a great week. Welcome to part 2 of the mainline murders. Part 1, we learned about Sue Reinert, Bill Bradfield, and Jay Smith. We talked about what was going on behind the scenes at Upper Marion High School, Jay Smith's trouble with the law, and Susan and Bill's romantic, convoluted relationship. Now, here in part 2 is where we're going to learn all about Bill's manipulation of Sue, how Jay Smith, the principal of this school, ties into all of this, and the many years of court battles that would eventually take place. Let's get into it, Jenna.
Okay, Jackie. So in part 1, we left off with Bill providing a rock-solid alibi for the weekend Sue was murdered. Sue's body, just to recap, was found at the Host Inn Motel in Harrisburg, and Jay Smith's proximity to where Susan was found, with him also being in Harrisburg, as he was about to check into the Camp Hill Correctional Facility to start serving his sentence for theft. At the same time, police searched Sue's home to find nothing out of the ordinary. So now we are into early July of 1979. If we remember, Sue was murdered around June 25th. So now we're into July. It would come to light that just weeks before her death, Susan had changed her will. She had also taken out a couple of costly life insurance policies, Jackie. We know how this goes, right?
We know where this is going.
She named her, quote, boyfriend at the time as her beneficiary, whom she described in her legal filings as, quote, her future husband, who was none other than Bill Bradfield. It is said her estate was valued at approximately $730,000 in insurance policies alone. To put this into perspective, 1978, $730,000 was a lot of money we're talking about. Adjusted for inflation purposes, in 1978, this would be the equivalent of $3.5 million in today's money. So there we have our first inkling of a motive here. She was taking out life insurance policies, many of them, and putting Bill as the beneficiary.
And I guarantee you, Bill was behind all that. I'm sure he was instructing her, hey, we need to set up a really good portfolio for the kids for when we move to England and live our lives together. I'm sure he was the puppet master behind all of it. And yeah, that is a lot of money. Back
a lot
then.
of money
I don't know if you...
for a single mom, too. And again, she was blinded by his love bombing. He probably promised that they would get married and they would be a family. Yep. She literally was blinded by this love. I mean, Sue, think of your kids.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember our parents talking about these times, but I mean, back then my mom said she would make like $2 an hour as a secretary. That milk? What was it? Less than $1 a gallon?
Oh, yeah.
Gas was cheap. So I mean, $730,000 in insurance policies left to Bill Bradfield. She is worth more to you dead than alive.
Yeah.
So
and changing of the will. That's a big one too. So the timing as well. She did this all just weeks. That's right, weeks before her death.
The last policy was actually signed 5 days before she was found murdered.
That does not make Bill look very good. Investigators also discovered that in November of 6 months before her passing, Susan's mother, Jane Gallagher, passed away. leaving behind a significant inheritance for her children. Sue had received roughly $200,000 in property, as well as approximately $30,000 in cash assets, which were transferred into Sue's accounts. For her death, Susan had begun to withdraw large amounts of cash from her accounts, estimated to be roughly $25,000. That's almost her whole cash inheritance. This had been taken out over several deposits, and Sue had told the bank employees at the time she was hoping to place the funds into multiple high-yielding investments managed by none other than her boyfriend and future husband, Bill Bradfield. And she was telling everyone it's her future husband, even the people at the bank. That just goes to show you how kind of blinded she was by his manipulation. Bill had promised to handle the transactions for her and was promising that his investments would yield a high enough reward to fund the couple's marriage later that summer, as well as their move to England. So he's just in her ear promising all these false hopes, and she was believing every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, he was like the puppet master, controlling her, even the withdrawals from the account. He was behind all of it.
Mm-hmm.
When the investigators began investigating this case earlier that year, they found fake stocks and bonds inside of Susan's home from Bill, who had been responsible for forging and selling them to her. These had been created for mostly non-existent companies and were essentially meaningless, but indicated a long period of fraud perpetuated by Sue's own lover. This painted a
Wow.
motive for Bill, and the police began piecing it together. It was like a big light bulb just went off, and they began honing in on him. The manipulation was out of control with this dude.
He's like Corey Richins.
Yes, he's like the
Yeah.
male version of Corey Richins, whose
Yeah.
trial's going on right now that Jackie and I have been catching up on, and we can do a special episode about that maybe at a later date. But so Bill's like manipulating her, having her take out all these policies, having her take cash out of her account. So while this is going on, Sue's brother and ex-husband, whom she's still close to the ex-husband, remember, they took Bill to court over her will and the missing $25,000 from the mother's estate.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sue's own brother and ex-husband, they could see clear as day what was going on here. And they were trying to help save Sue. What they really should have done was told Bill to get the fuck out of her life and never come around again. But they did take him to court. He was sentenced and ordered to pay restitution of $25,000 back to the estate. Investigators continued pursuing leads for months after Susan's death, but it wasn't until 1980 that the case saw a major development. During a search of Jay Smith's home, police collected fibers that prosecutors later argued were consistent with the fibers found on Susan's body, which was one of the only evidence found on her was two of these fibers. This is evidence that would become a key point of contention. The discovery intensified scrutiny on Jay Smith and, by association, Bill Bradfield, since both men knew Susan and worked together. So this is kind of tying the three together. This fiber, this little tiny fibers tying the three together.
Right. And it's not that far off that the three of them would be associated in some way, being that
When you find
Jay
out,
is their
yes.
boss and
Yep.
they are the English teachers of his English department.
Yes, so it kind of all clicks together here. Then in 1981, Bradfield was arrested on unrelated charges for selling Susan the fraudulent bonds and all that fake stuff that he was selling her, the non-existent companies. In a shocking twist, Bradfield's former student and one of his current girlfriends, that's right, former student and current girlfriend, she's 20 years old, Wendy Ziegler, so she's barely graduated, and he began dating her. So Wendy was charged as a co-conspirator in the fraud case as they were vacationing in New Mexico, where Jackie and I will be going for Beyond the Crime. New Mexico. So they're vacationing in New Mexico when Bill tried to cash in on Susan's insurance policy. The fraud trial lasted 5 days, and he was convicted of theft by deception and served only a few months in prison before he was released. It might not have been the murder charge everyone was hoping for, but it was a start.
It was a start.
Well-
In 1982, a grand jury convened over Susan's murder and key witnesses to testify, including none other than the extremely disturbed Principal J. Smith, who was already in prison serving a 7 to 16-year sentence for his own weapons and theft charges. If you recall in part one, we mentioned how he was dressing up as a security guard and going to neighboring stores in the area, such as Sears and department stores, and stealing cash from them. While he's serving his own sentence, they're calling him up for grand jury testimony. Bill Bradfield was eventually arrested on April 6, 1983. Woohoo! Finally, we got him.
Finally.
While there was no physical evidence tying Bill to Sue's murder, prosecutors were confident that they had a strong enough case against him. For example, Mary Grove, Susan's elderly next-door neighbor, she was one of the prosecution's star witnesses. She recalled Bill Bradfield being a constant presence at Susan's home, especially between December of 1978 and up to the week of Susan's death, a time period that correlated to when Susan had inherited money from her deceased mother. Mary had also been one of the last people to see Susan and her children alive, having witnessed them in their front yard just minutes before leaving around 9 p.m. on June 22nd, 1979. So remember, Bill in part one is saying, I didn't have a close relationship with her. She's crazy. I was just a helpful friend. But we've got the next door neighbor saying that Bill was definitely around visiting Susan's home, especially around the time that Susan's mother died, and would have presumably had knowledge of her recent inheritance.
Yeah.
Along with Mary Grove, the next door neighbor's testimony that she's seen Bill around quite frequently. This helps establish a long-term relationship between Susan and Bill. And it was backed up by many people, many of Susan's other loved ones who recalled her gushing about Bill for an extended amount of time. And Susan's own therapist, Roslyn Rivkin, said in a deposition that Mrs. Reinert and Mr. Bradfield were lovers from 1973 up until her death. Susan Reinert's therapist even acknowledged that Susan had knowledge that Bill was living with Susan Myers throughout this relationship. So Susan Reinert was well aware that Bill was living with Sue Myers, another one of their teachers in their English department, who he was also keeping a secret from everybody else.
And he was probably also telling Sue Myers that he was going to marry her too. I mean,
Exactly.
Whatever keeps him around, you know?
Yeah, and Susan Reinert is just this, lady that's obsessed with him, and he doesn't want to let her down and, doesn't want to be mean or anything. I'm sure he was playing both sides very, very well. But for this to be ongoing since 1973 and to have your therapist, who is your biggest confidant in life,
Yeah.
to testify to this is pretty damning. Let's not also forget Susan Myers, the other Susan. She was reported by local newspapers to have signed an affidavit that she read in Bill's diary, a passage saying, quote, I wish I could kill Susan Reinert for insurance money.
You're kidding.
The circumstantial evidence is just mounting, Jenna.
Don't ever do that. Don't ever write in your diary or a note, handwritten ever, to anyone saying you wish you could kill your boyfriend's girlfriend.
Have a diary. I suggest not having a diary unless you're trying to build a case that someone's going to kill you or you're being abused.
Don't put the notes in your phone either. We know that they'll go through your phone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, just don't document anything incriminating in life. Just don't. Finally, another testimony was from a fellow inmate. He reportedly told a fellow inmate while he was in jail for the fraudulent bond charges that he said, quote, none of this was meant for the kids, only Susan. While it seemed at first the defense strategy was to deny the relationship between Bill and Susan, it seems Bradfield's ultimate defense was to blame J. Smith. A surprising twist in the trial came from Vincent Villegas, who was another English teacher at Upper Marion High School. And if you remember from part one, he was with Bill Bradfield and Susan Myers down at the shore the same weekend that Susan Reinert was found murdered in Harrisburg. So he was kind of like an alibi witness. Vincent testified during Bill's trial that Susan Reinert was having an affair with Jay Smith, the principal, at one time, and, quote, might have known too much. He claims that Susan Reinert was aware that Jay Smith was, quote, and this is a direct quote from the news article, chopping up bodies and placing parts of bodies in various trash receptacles at school.
The school.
The school that my dad is going to.
What a freak.
My dad is going to high school at this place, mind you, at this time, maybe putting his trash in the same receptacle as a dead body that his principal could have put in the trash.
This is insane. Yeah.
Vincent even recounted that Bill Bradfield told him that Jay Smith confided in Bill that he was essentially a serial killer from the age of 16, and that if anything happened to Susan, Bill believed Jay would try to frame him.
Okay.
I'm just seeing fingers getting pointed in every 20 different direction here. I don't know if Bill purposefully told Vincent, his coworker, all of this about Jay Smith, knowing what the big plan was.
I think so. I think he was framing him. And I think that Jay was right. I think Bill was framing him.
Yeah. But also, Jenna, I don't know that Jay wasn't a serial killer.
Was he framed? Like, if he actually did kill Susan, then he wasn't really being framed if he did it. But I think Bill was trying to put all the blame on Jay. Like, it was Jay's idea.
Oh,
Jay did it.
100%.
So, I think that's like the picture he was painting. And yeah, we don't know if he was a serial killer. Based on what we do know about Jay Smith, that would be surprising at all.
No. And honestly, we know Bill is a master manipulator. That man has weaved so many stories for these women over the years. He knows how to set things up, set the stage. Also, he's an English teacher. I'm sure he's written fiction. He knows storylines very well. He knows how to paint things and plant little stories in people's heads.
Yeah.
He knows what he's doing. Well, when it came time for Jay Smith himself to provide testimony in Bill's trial, because we know Jay is an important figure in this, initially he was supposed to be a star witness. However, at the last minute, Bill Bradfield's legal counsel ultimately decided against calling Jay to the witness stand. Bradfield's attorneys reportedly grew unsure about what he would say if he were called to the stand. Quote, "For our purposes, Dr. Smith's responses have made him unavailable to us," said Bradfield's defense attorney Joshua Locke. That's a very PC way of saying, we're not sure what he's going to say, so we're not going to call him. It was said that Jay Smith was prepared to get up on that stand and just kind of let it rip.
Oh, I wish he did.
He was prepared to waive his Fifth Amendment rights to self-incrimination had he gone on the stand. But the Bradfield defense attorneys were freaking out because they weren't sure what he was going to say and if it was going to help or hurt their case. So he was too risky of a witness and never testified in Bill Bradfield's trial. So Jenna, tell us how it played out.
So in 1985, after weeks of testimony and a case built largely on circumstantial evidence, the jury found Bill Bradfield guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. That would be for Susan, Michael, and Karen, for kids that we just still don't know where they are.
Finally, some justice.
Yes. Yes, finally. Now we're into the mid-'80s, but what they got him. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jay Smith was finally arrested on June 25th, 1985. That is 6 years to the day that Susan's body was found.
Yeah.
Jay was charged also with 3 counts of first-degree murder for Susan, Michael, and Karen. Unlike Bill's trial, which was largely built on circumstantial and financial evidence, there were a few key pieces of physical evidence tying Jay to Susan and her children. During Jay's trial, it was revealed by prosecutor Richard Guida that the green pin Karen wore that day she disappeared was found under the front passenger seat of Smith's car, not Sue's car. Smith's car.
Not
Guido-
Bill Bradfield's, Jay Smith's car. And remember, this is the green pin we mentioned Karen was wearing in part 1 that had the letter on it as she was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art earlier that day for a field trip.
Yep. And one can only assume he put the children in his car after he killed their mother and he took them somewhere. We still don't know. So Guida told the jury in Smith's trial that the force that looks out for lost children led investigators to the pin. A letter from Jay to his wife, Stephanie, was introduced as evidence. In the letter, he asks Stephanie to get rid of the red rug, the same red rug fibers that were found in Susan's hair. Quote, "Every time I walk on that rug, something new pops out. It must go." Why in the world would he write this in his own handwriting in a note to his wife? Those were the fibers that tied Susan's body to Jay's home. We can only assume or imagine that he may have rolled her up in that rug to transport her body, maybe back to her car and set the stage. But it seems like he may have used the rug to transport her body. Agent Michael Malone testified in court that fibers from Susan's hair were an exact match to the fibers belonging to Jay's rug. Additionally, a single strand of Susan's hair was found in Jay's basement. Talk about a needle in the haystack. One single strand of hair found.
I mean, you could argue, okay, based on what was said in Bill Bradfield's trial, what if they were having an affair and they were sleeping in the basement, right? I mean, sure, you could argue that being his employee, there would be a reason for her to be at his house, but a rug fiber and in the basement, and we're finding your daughter's pin in his car. I mean,
it's like all the evidence, like
pointing to
alone,
Jay.
but all of it together
Yeah.
points right to Jay. It's so much physical evidence. What a difference between Bill being mostly circumstantial evidence and Jay is all physical evidence. It's just
mind-blowing.
Such a stark difference in the evidence. Finally, there was testimony from a fellow inmate of Jay Smith's while he was serving his sentence in Camp Hill for theft and weapons charges, who testified Jay said Bradfield approached him about taking out Susan Reinert because she was planning on telling authorities that Bill lied when he testified for Jay's theft trial, that Jay was with him at the Jersey Shore when the thefts occurred. Yes, you heard that right. Several years ago, Bill had testified as an alibi witness for his boss, his principal at Upper Marion High School, that he was with him at the Jersey Shore while the theft crimes were committed, even though Susan Reinert knew that was a lie. So he lied on stand.
Yep. There's so many motives here, Jenna, to get rid of Susan. Like, there's just so many.
So many, and so much manipulation, so much lies. These people, how did they sleep at night? The motives to get rid of Susan are just mounting at this point. Like we said, so many motives. Jay was eventually found guilty 1986 and sentenced to the electric chair for 3 counts of murder. For many on the main line, it felt like justice had finally been served. But the legal battle was far from over.
So, many of you listening to this story, you might be cheering right now. Like, yay, we finally got the bad guys. Yeah. However, it's not over yet. In 1992, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned Jay Smith's conviction, ruling that prosecutors had committed serious misconduct, including withholding key evidence that could have helped the defense. If that isn't a WTF moment, I don't know what else is. We just went through some of the physical evidence that was found on Jay's property in his car. Undeniable, but yet on a technicality, all of that can be taken away in an instant. In 1992, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned Mr. Smith's conviction on the grounds that the judge had erred by allowing hearsay evidence from Mr. Bradfield's friends. The High Court also found fault with the prosecution for withholding evidence of sand found on Ms. Reinert during the autopsy on her body, saying that the sand could have come from the same beach that Mr. Bradfield and his friends claimed to have visited. The prior procedure after such rulings was to have another trial, but because of what the Supreme Court deemed outrageous behavior by prosecutors, the justices said another trial would have amounted to a Mr. Smith in double jeopardy. Before the Smith ruling, double jeopardy, which prevents a new prosecution, was found to only exist when the defendants were acquitted. Basically, what that's saying is that during the J. Smith trial, there was too much hearsay evidence being provided from Bill Bradfield's friends. So it's kind of like, well, I heard from Sally Sue and she said this and that it should have been disputed and it wasn't. And then there was sand found on Susan Reinert's body that was withheld from Jay's defense attorneys. So they didn't even know there was sand found on her body. And they could have used that as their defense to say,
Yeah.
well, we know Bill Bradfield was down at the
Yeah.
shore when her body was found on Monday morning. It's possible that he could have killed her on Saturday or Sunday morning and then driven her body up to Harrisburg to frame Jay. So
Yep.
on that technicality, Jay is found to have not received a fair trial. His death sentence is vacated, and ultimately he entered a plea agreement on lesser charges, which granted him time served, and he was released on September 19th, 1992.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, talk about the makings of a movie. I know there was books written about this story, but holy shit. What an
There
ending.
is a Netflix documentary coming.
Yes.
So we're getting you guys educated on this,
Yes.
and I'm sure the documentary is going to fill in a lot of
Yes.
holes and maybe provide new information that maybe we
Yeah.
don't have here today. But I mean, you can't make this shit up. I don't think I could dream up a plot like this, you know?
It's
And
not
there's a
even-
thing, sometimes real life is better than fiction, right?
Like the whole high school seemed like the makings of a reality show, ending in a horror story. Is what it sounds like.
I mean, Jay Smith, how lucky can you be to have
Honestly.
such a good legal team to have gotten you out on this technicality? I would imagine
3 murder charges.
Three.
Not 1, 3. I mean,
three get you
holy
off
shit.
on these little technicalities. Somehow these technicalities just quote unquote erase the fact that her hair was found in your basement, that the rug fibers in your house were on her hair, and that her daughter's pin was in your car. We're just
Yeah.
supposed to forget that all ever happened. That's what pisses
Yeah.
me off about these legal technicalities.
Yeah.
We're just supposed to forget. Poof, they go away. Well, I'm bitter and I'm angry, but apparently Jay Smith is quoted to have said, quote, I'm bitter and I'm angry after walking out of the state correctional facility in Huntington, Pennsylvania. He says, and I quote, do you have a nuclear bomb I could drop on Pennsylvania? That's how bitter I feel. The Pennsylvania State Police tried to kill me.
Okay,
You motherfucker. Okay. You killed 3 people, but you're bitter and angry?
The audacity.
The fucking audacity. Okay. After being released, it doesn't end there. He gets to live happily ever after, Jenna. After being released from prison, Jay relocates to Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Apparently his daughter, Shar, the younger one, she lives up there. So he's like, I'm going to go live closer to her. That's northeastern Pennsylvania. So he's moving about 2 hours north of King of Prussia. I think that's far enough to kind of get away from people that might recognize you on a daily basis. It's a little more rural out there.
Rural
It's
area.
Yeah. Mountainous. He moves up there and he meets a woman named Maureen Leary and they get married. And that is where they lived together until he eventually passed away on May 13th, 2009. I did read his obituary, and there's a little sob story about this mass conspiracy against him
Mhm.
because when he was a principal at Upper Marion High School, he wanted to institute this strict disciplinary policy because of his military background, and all these wealthy parents didn't agree with it. And he wanted to institute this vocabulary curriculum that people didn't like. And because of that, there was a conspiracy against him and these accusations launched against him. You know, it's never
I
him.
Yeah, I think the vocab and like the ordinance in the school is the least of his concerns of his entire life.
Oh,
Okay,
this
Jay.
isn't his obituary. This is like
My
him
God.
alluding to this, okay, but doesn't outright say it. But there were attacks on his character launched against him, but he overcame those. And he was just volunteering at a soup kitchen with his wife up until his death. One thing I thought was very interesting, Jenna, and we didn't really mention this in part one. We mentioned his daughter Stephanie and her husband Edward being heroin addicts,
Yeah.
but his obituary does not mention them at
Mhm.
all, not even as preceding him in death or what have you. You see, Stephanie and Edward went missing from Jay's King of Prussia home on February 25th, 1978. This is before Susan Reinert's murder. His daughter and his son-in-law just seemingly vanished. They left behind all of their possessions and belongings in
Mhm.
the home, just upped and left. Jay, not even skipping a beat, managed to cash Stephanie's last two welfare checks after her disappearance and kept the money for himself. To this day, much like Karen and Michael Reinert, Stephanie and Edward have never been found. And in the mid 1980s, Edward was declared legally dead.
Well, maybe Jay Smith was a serial killer.
I'm beginning to
Mhm.
strongly believe that.
Mhm.
As for Bill Bradfield, he eventually became gravely ill with cancer, and the cancer did what the state could not and
Mhm.
sentenced him to death. And he was
Early
eventually
death.
found
Mhm.
unresponsive in his cell in 1998. He died at
Mhm.
the age of 64. Now, Jenna, he didn't leave us without a little poetic clue, I
Mhm.
guess. The English major in
Hidden
him, he
hidden
wanted to
Easter
leave
egg.
us with a
Yeah.
little tidbit, a little Easter egg, if you will. When he passed, his cell was searched and they found a Polaroid photo among his possessions. And I'm going to pull it up. It's a photograph of a wooded area with like a stone. And many believe that this could be a grave marker for where the children might have been buried. Now, my question is, if Jay did this, did Jay take the Polaroid photo and give it to him as like a keepsake? I don't know, but let me show you the photo. So this is the photo in question. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is, I don't know why this brings up Facebook, but yeah, it's just, there's leaves. It's just like this slim stone just sticking up out of the ground.
Yeah, it looks like a summer day because there's green leaves on the
Yeah.
tree, and then there's all the brush, the old leaves and everything on the ground, and
That's
this.
a good point that it looks summer because they would have
Yeah,
been killed in June.
exactly. And, the stone is almost turned upright like a headstone.
Yeah, yeah. That's the tragedy here, is that these kids were never found, and
Yeah.
neither was his daughter or son-in-law.
And the children father, Kenneth, died relatively young too, I believe in
Mhm.
2002.
Yeah.
He died never knowing what happened to his children.
Yeah. So Bill died, never told anyone
Mhm.
what happened to those children. I don't even think he ever admitted he had anything to do with it, because he's
Uh-huh.
got to believe his lies, Jenna. He's got to go down with the ship.
Yep,
It's a Corey Richins. You
yep,
weave such a wonderful story, you're going to go down believing it.
yep.
What's sad is, at the end of the day, no one's in prison for Susan
Mhm,
Reinert's murder. No one's in prison for the kids' murder. The kids were
mhm.
never found. It seemed like we had them. And then just like that, they slipped through our
It
fingers
all fell apart. It was
and
like,
it all fell apart.
uh, yeah, that's the saddest part is there was no justice done for Susan or her children. And they would have been in their 50s now, They probably
Yeah.
would have had kids of their own, families, and that was taken from them. And that's the saddest part.
My theory is that Bill saw Susan as a gold mine, right? He puppet mastered her taking out all that money. Ironically, the summer before they're supposed to run away to England and get married, he's like, "Oh, I need to get rid of her because I'm not going to do that. No,
Hey,
no, no,
he's like,
no.
I'm not taking it that far.
Yeah,
Let's pump
yeah,
the brakes."
no. I'm gonna no. We got to get rid of her before then." I bet you she probably mentioned, "I don't like that you lied when you testified for Jay that he was with you when he wasn't." So that's hanging over his head. It's coming to all his lies are coming to roost, and
And
he
she
felt
knew
it.
too much. She
She
knew
knew too
too much.
much. So he knew Jay was a dark, twisted, fucked up man. Okay.
Yes.
I think Bill knew a lot about Jay. I think
Yeah.
Jay and him were like this, and they
Yeah.
were both fucked up in the head.
Yep.
They saw a lot of each other in each other. And I bet you Jay was a serial killer.
Yeah.
I 100% believe it. Knowing what we know about this man now, like
Yeah, and
100%.
Bill probably said, "I need you to take care of something for me."
Yeah.
And when he told him what it was, Jay was like, "Abso-fucking-lutely."
Oh, please. I've been itching to do something dark lately, so sure.
Yeah.
And I bet you he said, "I'll split the money with you. She's worth
Yeah.
$730,000. I'll split the money with you if you take care of her." And I guarantee you, Bill called up and said, "Don't go to that retreat this weekend. How about I take you and the kids somewhere?" And probably had, I'm assuming, had Jay show up at her house. No, no, we know she left. So I'm thinking he had her drive to Harrisburg and stay at a different hotel. Remember, she canceled the hotel. Yeah,
He had her go to Harrisburg instead of Allentown because he had to lure her to Harrisburg because
because
that's
that's
where
where Jay
Jay
had to
was.
go. Yeah.
And Jay, there was a very small window of time here. They
Yep.
could get this done before Jay had to check into prison.
Exactly. So he probably had her, he said, "Go stay at that hotel. I'll meet you there." And then Jay, coming into town to report to prison, stops off at the hotel,
Mhm.
knocks on the door. And of course, she's going to answer it because, she knows him. And she's probably like, "What the hell are you doing here?" He comes in and does his thing, takes her and the kids and does what he needs to do, dumps her body and the kids. Now, what I'm having a little trouble with is tying the rug to her and the hair. So, on second thought, do we think she never even left the Ardmore area? Maybe she stopped off at Jay's house for some reason that Bill told her to.
And they drove her car to the Host Inn. They drove her
Yep,
car
then we
there.
got to get her car there,
Well, the fibers were at his home. Yeah, you're right.
and her hair was in the basement. So, she went missing on a Friday, but she wasn't killed till Sunday. And then they found her body on Monday. So it's possible he
Maybe.
held her captive because they did say she was bound.
Yeah.
But what do you do with the two kids unless he killed them right away?
He could have tied her up, took the kids out to the woods, did his thing,
Yeah.
and then came back and then ended her life and then put her in her car in the parking lot.
But then he'd have to get her car to
Maybe
Harris.
he drove the car there. Maybe
Yeah.
he took the kids in his car to the woods and then came back for Susan, finished her,
Yeah.
and then drove Susan's car to the Host Inn and then left her car in the parking lot and then got a ride over to prison or whatever.
That's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
too. It's hard to even obtain court records and stuff. Otherwise, I'd try to find out too, like to confirm, like, how did he get to prison? Did he take a bus? Did he?
Probably. I think he drove her car up to Harrisburg because that's where he had to go to jail. I think that
Right. And why would you drive your own car? You're not coming back in it.
no, I think he killed
Yeah.
her, drove with
Yeah.
the body in the
Yeah.
car, parked it in the motel, staged it, and then walked over to prison.
I think that's
Mhm.
definitely plausible. And
Mhm.
then everything probably fell apart when Susan's family started contesting all the money
Mhm.
because eventually Bill does abandon his claims to the life insurance policies.
Yeah.
To, show that, he's a good guy and that he had nothing to do with her death. So eventually you're not cashing in on that money. Now Jay's not getting his end of the bargain. But you know what? Jay probably killed for funsies. Let's be real. He probably
Oh, yeah.
needed to
Yeah.
get that out of his system.
Yeah. He would do it for free, I'm pretty sure.
Probably. He just wanted a reason. So I think everything kind of fell apart. And that's why we're seeing like this triangulation of
Yeah.
like pointing fingers.
And we always say that's when things start to fall apart, when one person turns on the other person.
Yeah. But I think Bill was definitely the brains. Jay was the brawn. And I highly suspect Susan Myers knew everything. And she's probably, good, we can get rid of that Susan Reinert. She's trying to get with my man anyway. I guarantee you, Susan Myers knew way more than she.
Yeah, and she was able to never be charged. Unlike Wendy, the other girlfriend who was charged with the fraud, Sue Myers stayed just far enough out of that circle that she was never charged with anything. But she definitely knew.
Definitely. I wonder if she's still alive, and maybe, if they do this documentary that's coming out, I wonder if she'll be in it, because there is another guy, that Vincent Velatus, he is still alive. Apparently he's been teaching it up in Marion for years. He stayed there.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm gonna be curious to see what everyone has to say now that was close with Bill Bradfield.
Yeah.
And see what they're willing to talk about now that
I know.
it's been long gone. But yeah, I did see upcoming Netflix series. This was released in October 2025. A new Netflix series inspired by Philadelphia's mainline murder during the late 1970s is currently in the early development stage.
All
It's
right.
executive produced by Andrew Sadrowski and Aggregate Films. So it's in production right now. So hopefully in a couple years we'll see this Netflix documentary and you guys will be like, I know Stop Who Does That did that one. And
Yeah.
Jackie's dad went to school there
Wow.
and knew Mrs. Reinert. But I mean, as we close out, Jenna, do you have any other thoughts on
Just, I think that this case definitely is Netflix worthy. If there ever was a case, I
It was
think
this one?
it would be this
Yeah.
one. So, that should be good. And again, just our thoughts and prayers go out to Susan's family and Kenneth, her ex-husband, as well as his family, because they never got answers for the children.
No. And I feel like we need Body Movin'. The lady from Don't Fuck with Cats who
Yeah.
found the serial killer just by like a doorknob or something.
Yeah.
I feel like we need Body Movin' to analyze that photo. We need to find those kids. Like I really would love to like explore the King of Prussia area and the woods, or even like around where the hotel was in Harrisburg. I mean, they've got to be somewhere.
Yeah.
I think there's sonar we have nowadays. I mean, there has to be a way to see if we could find their bodies.
Yeah.
And
That'd be
just
a
bring them
great end.
home.
That'd be a great end to this story, is finding the children's bodies.
That would be, I think, the best resolution for anyone right now. May Susan rest in peace with her children. I mean, I guess it gives me some comfort to know they're all three together,
Same.
wherever they are, right? It's just the physical bodies need to be resolved. And that's the sad part. Those poor children. We say this every episode, I swear, is everyone forgets about the kids. Everyone. All right, guys, we hope you enjoyed this 2-part series. It was trippy and convoluted, but we made it through and we hope it made sense. So
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time. Bye.
Did you know that Stop Who Does That is a member of the Darkcast Podcast Network? If you like today's episode, check out this trailer from one of our partner podcasts, Psychology of the Strange. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
There are moments when the world feels thinner, when the line between good and evil blurs, when certainty slips, and you're left standing somewhere in between. This season, I'm stepping into those spaces, the thresholds, the gray zones, the stories and figures that live at the edges of what we think we understand. Through folklore, horror, and psychology, I explore why we're drawn to the dark and what those crossings reveal about who we are. Because fear isn't just something we survive. It's something that changes us. So step carefully, you're closer to the threshold than you think. This is Psychology of the Strange.